Aloha, welcome. I'm Stephen Kagawa, your Aloha financial advisor and NAIFA's humble diversity champion. As the grandson of the man who abolished discriminatory underwriting practices in the United States, I'm honored to serve as your MC for this very first Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Impact Week. This is my 35th year as a member of NAIFA, and it's of great pride to know that ours is now an association that takes diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, to heart. And it's NAIFA's DEI Council that's bringing you today's programming, as well as the sessions of tomorrow and Thursday, as an initiative of NAIFA's Talent Development Center. This Center of Excellence is our hub of resources and thought leadership directed toward recruiting and nurturing the next generation of insurance and financial professionals. Know that DEI sits firmly at the center of that important goal for us to best serve all Americans from every community, and provide that financial security they need and deserve to find life fulfilled. We need advisors, managers, agency owners, and company executives who reflect and represent those communities, who come from those communities, whether underserved, poorly served, or unserved by our industry. NAIFA knows this is crucial to our country as well as to our organization's growth and continuing relevance. In fact, DEI initiatives form key components of the NAIFA 2025 strategic plan, the plan that intends to guide our association's programming over the next 5 years. This Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Impact Week is just a start. There's so much to look forward to here in that regard at NAIFA. Now, before we get started, I've got a few housekeeping items. We're all in listen only mode. So if you've got a comment or question, please use the chat feature. And I see that some of you are already doing that. Good stuff. Now, all sessions are being recorded and will be available to you via on demand next week. So you ready? It's now time for our first session, Strike the Match, a discussion focused on unleashing the power of women in financial services. And we've got none other than the leadership of women in insurance and financial services with us today to drive that forward. First is the president of Women in Insurance and Financial Services, WIFS. She is an advanced case design and chief talent officer at 6M Group, and a multiple industry award recipient with more than 25 years of experience in insurance and financial services. Say hello to Carrie Sayre. Joining WIFS President Sayre is their president-elect, who is also a vice president with National Life Group, responsible for growing their footprint in serving the educational and government markets. Here's financial services marketing guru, Darlene Flagg. Dawn Wolfgram is the immediate past president of WIFS and regional managing director at Principal Financial Group. An expert in change management, her passion centers on helping her team of professionals grow and capture their potential. Presidents past, present, and future of WIFS, the floor is yours.
Good morning or afternoon. I am Carrie Sayre, the current president of Women in Insurance and Financial Services. And no, we were not hijacked by a commercial. We know that that's kind of a peculiar way to begin today, but that commercial is particularly relevant today in that that commercial is from the 1980s. And if you know anything about how women have been affected by this pandemic, it is estimated that women have been 4 times more adversely affected by this pandemic than their male counterparts. Also, a reason why that is important is that women have been pushed back as far as the number of women in the workforce 25 years, to the time where that commercial was not only acceptable, but applauded. I recently saw in one of my dad's old magazines an advertisement for Bird's Eye frozen TV dinners when they were being first introduced to the market. The caption read, "I'll be late, honey, but dinner won't be." Today, women are still bringing home the bacon, frying it up in the pan, then doing the dishes, starting the laundry, and tucking the children into bed. According to Sheryl Sandberg in her book, Lean In, women are still responsible for the lion's share of what goes on in the household, as well as the child rearing. A new study even suggests that though millennials talk a good game about equality, that young women are still responsible for what goes on in the home, and also, if there are children involved, taking care of those children. Alas, some things may never change. But I implore you today that it is time, in fact, it's way past time, for our industry to change how we attract, develop, and advance women. It's time to strike the match after decades of meaningless presentations and hollow words. We all know the stats, although we're surely going to remind you of a few of them. Many times we shake our heads, scratch our heads, and then we go back to our offices and do things the way we've always done them. We are women in insurance and financial services, not diversity in insurance and financial services. However, most of the concepts we're going to talk about today apply to diversity in our industry as well. Nothing we're going to talk about today is second or third hand. Everything we're going to talk about today, every story we tell, was either experienced by one of our board members or is derived from a one-on-one interview with a woman in our industry. Our board members that you see here have well over a century of experience. In addition to our experience, we've read hundreds, if not thousands of pages of research for this presentation. This presentation does not address pay gap. It seems that the women in our industry are paid equal amounts for the equal jobs. The challenge may still exist, however, when a general agent has the jurisdiction over what he pays a female versus a male counterpart. This presentation is by no means directed at men. Some of the most challenging stories we've heard were of female managers and how they treated their female producers. It's been our experience that it's not hard to attract women to this industry. It's in the development and advancement where we fail. In what better time to attract women to our industry than when we have been pushed back and out of the workforce? What you're about to see is a labor of love and passion as we aim to leave the insurance and financial industry better than we found it. This is our 2020 board that you see in front of you, and it was under Don Wolfgram's leadership that we developed this Strike the Match. As I mentioned, our mission is to attract, develop, and advance women in our industry. It is our dream statement to be the global change leader, inspiring women to achieve their dreams. Don, you can start the slides. WIFS started in 1936. I like to say we were diversity before diversity was cool. Can you imagine in 1936, the epitome of diversity was probably the number of men that had a beard and the number of men that didn't have a beard. As I said, it's our mission and our dream statement to be the global change leader that inspires all women to achieve their dreams. It is a daunting task indeed, and we're probably not going to change much in the next 45 minutes, except we certainly hope we're going to change your thoughts and your mind when you think about women in our industry. It's time to strike the match for change. Why did we call this Strike the Match? Well, psychologists and educators say that when you're trying to teach a new concept, the more senses that you can work on, the bigger the change and the more that folks will remember the concept being taught. So when you strike a match, you hear the match strike, you see the flame, you smell the smoke, you feel the heat, and in some instances, you almost taste the sulfur from the match. So that's why strike the match. And I hope from now on, whenever you strike a match, you remember striking the match for change. This is one of the most popular ads ever in the ad industry. And this is from 1969. You've come a long way, baby. 1969, can you imagine? We thought we'd come a long way then. If you think about 1969, it was only 6 years before where President John F. Kennedy was assassinated in Dallas. Today, only 18% of leadership in our industry the offices are held by women. Only 13% of producers in our industry, it is estimated, are women. Yep, it's the truth. The dial really has not moved much in the past 30 years. This is Nancy Rash, one of the first presidents of WIFS. When Nancy started out in our industry, she was the only woman in her office. And she was told every day that she was expected to wear a dress or a skirt. Crazy? Just a couple of years ago, one of our board members was talking about an office that she had visited. And she was told by the manager, quite proudly, that all of his girls were required to wear a skirt or a dress every day, as he looked down his nose at her in her slack pantsuit. And he eventually called her boss and told him that he did not really appreciate the way that she had worn or what she had worn to his office. Can you imagine that ever being done to a man? A young lady that I was speaking to recently told me that the manager in their office told the young ladies that he liked it when they had their nails polished and that they wore dresses and looked pretty. Lord knows we have tried to look like men for years. We've worn shoulder pads out to here. And many of you may remember the movie Working Girl and all the outfits that the women wore in this. And who could forget the Melanie Griffith's famous quote, because it was okay, she had a head for business, she had a bod for sin. Unbelievable. So we have had for years to adapt to the industry. And I implore you now, it's 2021, and it's time for the industry to adapt to women. Many would argue at this point that it's generational, that a lot of the discrimination and slights were from a past generation, and that a lot of those folks are retiring. Well, and many are quick to dismiss that gender bias even still exists. I was interviewing a male in the past couple of years, and he told me of a business meeting that they had had in an agency, and they were getting ready to hire a new receptionist and brand ambassador for the front office. And one of the men raised his hands very, very honestly and sincerely and said, "What skills does this person need to have? I think I have someone in mind." The 34-year-old general agent looked at him and winked and said, "It really doesn't matter as long as she is easy on the eyes." One of our board members tells a story of when she was moderating a panel of men, and one of the men had run out of coffee. And he scanned the audience and scanned the audience, and then he finally found a young woman, and he pointed to her and he said, "Could you get me another cup of coffee?" This young woman was mortified and humiliated. Nevertheless, she went and got the gentleman his cup of coffee. Can you imagine that being done to a young man? Research indicates that we tend to hire ourselves. That's why the industry has not changed too drastically. So we read a story fairly recently about a general agent who walked down his halls, and he realized that everyone in the agency looked just like he did. So he began asking a woman to sit in on the interviews with him. And before too long, the hallways changed, and he was able to hire a much more diverse looking sales group in his office, but he had to ask for help. Drilling down a little bit more, less than 1% of general agents in our industry are women. Most of our old carriers have 0 general agents that are female. We are different. We have tried for years to pretend that both men and women learn the same way, socialize the same way, and do things the same way. But the bottom line is we are very different. Many studies have been done regarding gender and cultural differences within companies. And what we've discovered is that with companies have a greater diversity, they typically have a much happier workforce. And to an industry that's often driven by greed, they're usually much more financially successful as well. One of my favorite stories this woman in the industry has told me over the years is she was in an industry meeting, and there was a panel of 6 men on stage, and they were going to talk about, of all things, recruiting women to the industry. And the first man got up and he said, "You got to understand, it's going to take a while." And this woman stood up and raised her hand, and she said, "Just how long is it going to take?" One of the most profound statements I've heard about change in our industry is from Angie Rebufo, one of our past presidents for Women in Insurance and Financial Services. When she was talking about this past year in the pandemic, she said, "This year we have changed on a dime." Why? Because we had to. We changed, we pivoted because we had to. We can change, and it's time we do change. It's 2021 again. We're not the only industry that has been challenged as far as recruiting women to the industry or to their industry. In the 50s and 60s, only 15% of the performers and the top chairs in our national orchestras were held by women, only 15%. So they decided to do something about it. Today, more women hold more than 50% of America's top chairs in America's top 200 orchestras. How did they do it? Why the change? It was simple, really, and a little bit sad. They began having blind auditions. They put a screen up between the auditioners and the musicians. And in the 70s and 80s, they began hiring more women. Some even went so far as to ask the women to take off their shoes, so to eliminate the distinctive sound of women's shoes. And voila, now more than 50% of the national chairs in our national orchestras are held by women. And this still happens today. We all have biases. Yes, we do. Some we know our conscious biases, and some are unconscious. It's called an implicit bias, a bias that causes you to do things that you're not even aware that is making you make that decision. And honestly, this is where we usually stop. We say, well, we have biases, we don't know about them, so we're all human, right? And quite frankly, again, this is usually where we stop. We make excuses. It's okay though, right? Because we really build the tallest buildings in the world. Did you know that 70% of widows leave their financial advisor on the death of their spouse? 70%. That's pretty significant in that it's estimated that there are 13 million widows in America today. Did you know that only 10% of children stay with their parents' financial advisor upon the death of both their parents? This is pretty significant because it's estimated that 48 trillion is going to transfer from baby boomers to their heirs in the next 22 years. Not exactly successful when 30% of widows stay and only 10% of children stay with their financial advisors. All of our research, all of our experience continues to come down to 3 things. But like losing weight, eating more healthy, it doesn't matter. The first thing is you gotta want it, right, Dawn?
Thank you, Carrie. And yes, Carrie, you're absolutely right. It comes down to 3 things. But before I share those 3 things with you, I want to make sure that we spend a little bit of time. It all starts with this word. It starts with the desire to want to make a change. First, you got to want it. But the three things that we're going to cover today, first is culture. We're going to look at culture. We're also going to look at leadership, and we're also going to take a look at self-awareness. These are the three things that can unlock a totally different future for this profession that we are in. Let's start with culture. Culture is, it is fair to say sometimes that home offices don't always know what's going on inside of their local offices when it comes to creating an inclusive culture. And sadly, if they are, sometimes they might even be reluctant to address issues head on, maybe because of production or maybe because they just simply don't know how. Harassment and diversity training, unfortunately, are oftentimes even seen as a joke. But the true litmus test is your office a place that you would like your mom to work, that you would like your wife to work, or that you would like your daughter to work? It's the true litmus test. And as we know, many companies will set a goal every January to change the look of and the demographic of their organizations. Well, how is that working? We would contend that it's not always working very well, because oftentimes what we see is in April, it tends to go back to business as usual and their gender diversity goals fall by the wayside. Many times it's decided upon inside of companies that if we start a women's group, well, that'll fix it. And don't get me wrong, it is a great thing to do. It is really a great thing to do, but it can sometimes fall short. Why? Because oftentimes these groups can actually stifle true sharing because many women are afraid that they'll be judged or viewed differently by the company or within that company. So rather than face any kind of consequence or retribution or even embarrassment by sharing, they might be reluctant to share. And as a result, they still end up feeling like a failure. Love this quote, that if you judge a fish on its ability to climb a tree, it will always believe that it is stupid. So what we have found is that women need a clear career path, and seldom is there a defined career path or for promotion and advancement for women in this business. And because there are so few women in those high-level positions, it's even hard to give women who want those positions a line of sight into what's possible. So we need to see promotions for women. My story rings true here, and I'd like to share. I had an advocate. I had a sponsor. And because of that, I was able to get recognized and be promoted into a role that no other woman in this company had ever been put in before. This advocate or this sponsor that I had took a chance on me. And to this day, I work really, really hard to not let him down. But unfortunately, that's not always the case. And we can probably restate countless stories where highly qualified women were passed up time and time again for promotion. Like this one. I know of a female manager around the country. She is a phenomenal manager. And she is second in line, a second line manager, and her GA is not in the office very often. In fact, he's hardly ever in the office, to the point where the advisors that work within that office continually come to her for help. She is recruiting successfully. She's maintaining their office culture and directing staff. She's doing a great job. Well, she was looking for a chance to be recognized and promoted. Over several years, when that didn't happen, she finally asked why. Why aren't I getting promoted? And her boss reluctantly told her it was because she was a female and that they believed in that particular part of the country, they felt that a female could not get the job done like a man could. She left that company. We also interviewed a woman who was on a team of 10 RVPs. She was the only female in that group of 10. She felt she had a continuous challenge in front of her that she embraced and adopted. And in fact, her results grew by 70%. And when she continued to be overlooked time and time again for promotion, when she asked why, she was told that she was viewed as prickly. So what that means, what we believe that that means, and what she believed that that meant, is that there were probably some differences in communication styles that were at play here. Unfortunately for us and for the industry, well, she left that company. What we find is that women need advocates. We also find that they need sponsors. So what is the difference? Advocates show support, and that is wonderful, and we need as many advocates as possible. But sponsors go above and beyond. They show a deeper level of investment, and I'm not talking financial. I'm talking care. I'm talking taking them by the hand, showing them the way, putting themselves out there with that person. That's what a sponsor is. Sponsors and advocates can be men or women, and that's the great news. We also find that women are looking and needing role models. Somebody to help them along the way, giving them tips and tricks, just helping them. Even when it comes to just simple things like how to dress for the boardroom, and how there's a big difference between dressing for a nightclub, a night out on the nightclub, or dressing for a boardroom. It can be just that simple. One organization that we met with shared that they give a clothing allowance to producers, both men and women. So I'd like to share a quick story about a woman advisor in New York. She was a career changer, and she was fabulous. She was articulate. She was brilliant and charming. She lasted in this industry for 2 years. She was the only female advisor that was brought in, was hired into this organization that she joined, that had been in existence for 50 years. And she was the only female in that agency. We interviewed her to find out why she left. She said, "I can do the job, but I can't stand the disrespect." What we found through our continued interview of her is she said that the men constantly spoke over her in the agency. They kept interrupting her. She felt like she had no voice. She felt like she had no opinion, that her opinions didn't matter. Well, numerous studies have been done to show that on a consistent basis, men continually interrupt women. I'd encourage you to look up some of the studies yourself. But one study I read showed that 2/3 of the interruptions in a meeting are generally done by men. And of those, 90% of the time, those interruptions are when a man is interrupting a woman while she's speaking. The other third of interruptions that are done by women. And unfortunately, about 90% of those times, they're also interrupting when a woman is speaking. So ladies, unfortunately, we can be our own worst enemy here. But think about how this could have been different for that woman in New York. If only she had had an advocate, if only she had had a sponsor, someone who gave her the floor and gave her the voice, made her feel like her ideas were important. She left the industry. So to change the culture, we need a clear path for advancement. We need more female role models. We need more female coaches and female speakers. We also need outside perspectives. So is your office comfortable and inviting to women, both producers as well as clients? So this leads us to the next topic of leadership. And I shudder actually to share this story, but I will, because I want to share with you that this stuff happens. It really happens. And it happens it happened in my office on my watch. Well, one morning, as I was doing my daily walk around the office, saying good morning to everybody, I noticed a brand new sign that was posted to one of my advisor's doors, his office doors. And the sign said, "Clothing optional behind this point." Well, he thought it was funny. He thought it was innocent. He thought it was really no big deal. Well, it wasn't funny, it wasn't innocent, and it was a big deal. I had him take it down immediately, naturally. But leadership, what this means is that leadership is doing things that put your entire organization first, and all of the people in it, every last individual has to be put first. So it's about creating a culture where it's comfortable for everyone. As a leader, that is our job. That sign may have been funny in a different circumstance, but it was not acceptable at our office. So here's a couple of quotes I'd like to share with you about leadership. When I talk to managers, I get the feeling that they are important. When I talk to leaders, I get the feeling that I am important. And I really like this one. If you want everyone to like you, don't be a leader, sell ice cream. Leadership also means having to deal with some bad decisions from time to time. Now, naturally, we encourage offices to include both men and women in all of their social outings, like golf outings, just grabbing a beer after work, whatever that might be. We've all seen, unfortunately, that sometimes women want to prove that they can hang with the guys, yet sometimes they just can't. So are you as a leader looking out for them? Reminding people, not just women, to be cautious at after-hour events, because we all want to have fun together. That's where we make memories, right? But we also have to balance that with making sure that people are feeling comfortable, and they don't feel pressured to do things that they're not comfortable doing just to fit in. So let's shift our focus a little bit on how meetings are led in your office. Do all people have an equal voice? Are all people in your organization, in those meetings, are they taken seriously? And when they are interrupted, does someone have the courage to call it out? Or better yet, do the women in your organizations feel empowered enough to stand up for themselves without fear of retribution? In leading your meetings, it's also important to recognize that women oftentimes have different communication styles than men. Not always, but often. Did you know, as an example, women are taught at a very early age to not brag about themselves or their accomplishments? It's not ladylike, and it's true. We're constant, many of us have been told that all our lives. Well, as a result, women don't openly celebrate themselves. So I went to a conference 2 years ago, and in this conference, they had us take a few minutes and just with a piece of paper and a pencil, jot down things that we were proud of. They called it a brag-a-log. So I sat there with my pen in my hand and my paper in front of me, and I was stumped. I had nothing to write down. And my daughter, who was sitting next to me, she was aghast. She said, of all people, I should be writing feverishly of all of the things that I've done and overcome in my life. Well, many women are just like me, where we don't think of things in that light. Instead, we were just doing what we needed to do to get by. Well, we as women, we have to get better at telling our story. We have to encourage women to tell their stories, to be proud, to brag a little. It will help them compete on a more level playing field, and it will help them get ahead. So leadership is about making tough choices and decisions, not always easy ones, not always popular ones. So what are the next steps for leaders? Well, evaluating your firm, knowing that leadership is about making tough decisions, understanding what their numbers are, understanding their vision and being able to share their vision with their organization. It's about knowing what's going on in their local offices. It's also about setting daily, monthly, quarterly, and annual goals. And yes, I said daily. It's making sure that there's accountability built in and also potentially consequences. It's making no excuses. It's also about making no exceptions to your goals, to your objectives. It's also about asking for help and visiting your offices regularly. So what's going on in your mind right now? What is your follow-up process? Have you started thinking about things that need your attention, that need some focus? If so, be sure to write those things down and we can circle back to you at another time. So what we've done so far is we've talked a little bit about culture, we've talked a little bit about leadership, and now our final topic of self-awareness. What is self-awareness? Well, it's the conscious knowledge of oneself. It's understanding our character, our feelings, our motives, and our desires. And looking introspectively is not easy, but it is definitely worth it. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Darlene Flagg.
Thanks, Dawn. So, what's the biggest challenge to change? Is it change itself? Or is the biggest challenge to change being comfortable? Comfortable enough not to change. In this industry, people have the opportunity to create a lot of success. And it's wonderful to have success because it allows them to live the life that they've worked so hard for. Success allows them to buy new homes, to see, support, and care for the families in ways they couldn't imagine, to buy and to drive nice cars, and to have nice toys. It also allows for people in this industry to travel the world on their own terms. So if we can have all of these things because of our success, and if we're comfortable, then why are we talking about striking the match? Why would we rock the boat? Why drive change? Success can make us complacent. So again, why change? This attitude alone can prohibit and stifle the creativity needed in our industry to challenge the status quo, to challenge complacency, and to challenge the mindset that says, because we've always done it this way, we don't need to change, which further delays the equalizing of the representation of men and women in our industry. So let's look at 7 different ways that we believe can help you to change. Dawn has touched on a couple of them, but I'm going to dig a little bit deeper. So if you'd like to change, how do you do it? First, you decide to change, and then you build a reward system around it. Organizations have the ability to reward individuals in many ways. If you want people to change, you cannot reward stability. When it comes to motivating change and performance, build it into your company's culture and measure it. Change is needed in financial services. It organically grows our successes. It enhances our workforces. It builds our teams. It creates happier clients, leaders, and employees. And it better reflects the demographics of the people that we serve in financial services, Middle America. Connected to building that reward system is how we incentivize people. Dawn mentioned incentivizing through recognition. Does your company develop an annual set of performance goals and have a bureaucratic job description system that is resistant to change? That's not rewarding. Organizations that wish to perform well and change effectively create systems that reward both performance and change. Incentives aren't just about money either. I remember transitioning from one career to another, and I had a conversation with the People Center representative to say, my change is not about money. It's about all of the things that Dawn mentioned about coaching, mentoring, developing, and nurturing me to succeed in the role that I was looking for. It's about growing. Make sure that the rewards and recognition programs that you have designed are inclusive. Is the criteria set to include a specific group or exclude a specific group? Is it for women only? Is it for men only? Consider this. Are your rewards catered to a specific gender, age group, or ethnicity? If you've never had a female winner take the top prize at your company, then you haven't considered the traditional gifts that you're used to giving, like a tie, a jacket, or a set of cufflinks. Make sure that your rewards programs are inclusive. Our third is consistent messaging. To drive change through your consistent messaging provides clarity to the employees, those in your practice, your teammates. It provides that clarity that they need to see to buy into and to follow the new direction. Better aligned messaging helps all of your teammates understand that you're working toward a common goal. Do some crowdsourcing of the messaging, getting employee buy-in or your practices buy-in about common terms, and then ensure the leaders that are in place echo and live the messaging. That is one of the most critical steps. And then encourage and practice empathy. According to Harvard, make caring for others a priority and set high ethical expectations. Empathize with others and model empathy for others and provide opportunities for people to practice empathy. Empathy encourages and builds 4 things: collaboration, creativity, negotiation, and feeling safe. Creating an accountability culture is to recognize that wherever you are on the org chart, from the highest position to the low, that you encourage others to hold you accountable. Women don't want anything handed to them. We are simply seeking opportunity with clearly communicated expectations, fair measurements with incentives, opportunities for advancement, and a safe environment to thrive. We are willing to accept responsibility for our actions, so hold us accountable. Demonstrated growth must be rewarded. According to Joel Corey, he teaches us that positive reinforcement involves the addition of something of value to individuals as a consequence of a certain behavior, typically good behavior. So when you see change in the right direction, acknowledge it, then reward it, and finally build on it so that others exhibit that behavior. And finally, we all know that hitting a home run the first time up to bat is so rare. So if at first you don't succeed, try again. Change is constant. So if you don't keep trying, you will become comfortable where you are. No matter the distraction, keep changing. Next slide. If the hurdles continue to appear, ask for help. Pivot, refresh, restart. No matter what, remain committed to the change. We need more women in the financial services industry. 70% of women widowers, change financial advisors. We all know what the mortality tables say, right? Women live longer than men. No matter what, remain committed to the change. Pivot, refresh, restart. Change starts within each of you that have dialed in today, within your company, within your practice, within the culture that you embody. Lead by example. Drive for and be the leader that you want to see to change the conversation about women in financial services. One of the best drivers for change is self-awareness. Be honest. Identify and own your own complacencies so that you can help move change forward. I'll say that again. Identify and own your own complacencies so that you can help to move change forward. Pivot, refresh, and restart. That starts with reflecting on your own unconscious biases. Ladies and gentlemen, it's 2021 and it's time to strike the match. We hope this presentation has and will light the fire within you and start the conversation about changing the face of financial services to resemble Middle America and include more women. For 85 years, WIFS has been attracting, advancing, and developing women in this industry. We are affecting the careers of women daily. With more than 30 local chapters across the country, we connect women. By strategically pairing women professionals through our mentorship program, giving them the support, the coaching, and the guidance necessary to grow, we are developing women. Who do others say we are? We're an association that offers professional development, idea sharing, and networking. We provide relevant and unique growth experiences for women. Our mission to attract, develop, and advance is compelling to our membership. WIFS is focused on helping the members succeed both in life and professionally. In the words of Dawn Wolfgram, WIFS is a gift for women to learn and to share in a way that is unique and impactful. It creates a forum for women to be successful, which promotes what every company wants: more equal representation of women in our industry. If you're ready to change, start today. Identify the next steps and take them. Share your vision with your team, with your company, with your practice, with your clients, with your employees. Write the vision and make it plain. You have to have a plan in order to change. Set goals related to women in your workplace. Review them daily, weekly, and monthly, measuring them, and make sure that they're part of your annual plan. The industry knows why it needs more women. It doesn't always know how to attract and keep them. We hope that Strike the Match answered the how questions. Hiring more women isn't enough. Hiring more women isn't enough. Keeping women engaged, productive, and successful requires a change in the culture of financial services, making it truly female-friendly on purpose. Be the change in the industry that you want to see. Let's strike the match.
Thank you so much, ladies of the WIFS, our presidents, past, present, and future. Fantastic stuff, fascinating. I'm so happy that our company, the two key companies of our company, the presidents are women. So we're making the change, but at the same time, we learned that the struggle is real, and we've got to be the change by striking the match, right? We've got to hear, see, smell, feel, and taste that change. Awesome, fascinating figures and stats and things that we got to learn by. Well, let's now take a short break, and please return before 1 o'clock Eastern, a couple minutes before that, because we get ready for our next group of crazy, great people, and to hear about long-term care and underserved markets.